Hello, this is the England Pod Lionesses edition. We're here to preview the final games of the year for the Lionesses. The homecoming series comes to its conclusion with home matches against China at Wembley Stadium on Saturday and Ghana at St Mary's on Tuesday. David Walker from the England Pod is here, and Catherine Batty, women's football reporter at The Telegraph. And yeah, I mean, guess again, a bit like when we previewed the other two games, David, it's like, let's just have a bit of fun, shall we? This is the last sort of non-serious matches that England have for a while.
Yeah, full house or close to a full house against China at Wembley as well on Saturday, which is good. But interesting camp last time out with a good win against Australia, but a defeat to Brazil. So I don't know much about the strength of China or Ghana, but I guess it would be slightly, you'd be looking for 2 wins at least, say that. But I'm interested to know a bit more about this squad, because when it first came out, it looked to me like it was a bit injury hit, some big names missing. Hampton's not in the squad, so the goalkeeping department is an interesting one as well. Freya Godfrey, first call up for her. Interested to hear about what sort of player and see what sort of player she is. But I guess kind of similar to last time, what we were talking about last time, it does sort of still have the feeling of a slightly new era for England in terms of some new players being in the squad.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just run down the big headlines then. So yes, a call up for Freya Godfrey, London City Lionesses player, formerly of Arsenal, and has had a really good first half of the season. Lauren Hemp and Grace Clinton returning from injury, and yet, as expected last time, Michelle Adjumang is going to be out for the foreseeable after suffering that injury against Australia. Alex Greenwood is out, Leah Williamson remains out, and yes, Hannah Hampton is out. And then we've got also Lauren James, who is back for Chelsea, but is, I think, very sensibly being rested for this camp. And Jess Carter is also being rested, having won the NWSL sort of grand final with her team Gotham. So yeah, and then we've got sort of retaining places. Lucia Kendall had a very good camp last time. Taylor Hines is there, Grace Fisk, Anouk Denton, and yeah, Sophie Bagley. And I think it's right, Catherine, is the goalkeeping department has 1 cap between them. I think that's right, between 3 of them.
That is right, indeed, yeah. And I think it's actually quite interesting what Sarina Wiegman does over this camp, whether she sees Kiara Keating obviously got that one cap against Brazil, whether she thinks I'm going to give her both games because I want her to have as much experience as possible, so when, if Hannah Hampton is out again or injured again, she's got more experience in the bank, she'll have 3 caps rather than sort of 1 or 2, or whether she wants to go, I'll give Keating 1 game and I'll maybe give Morehouse the other, so then they've both got at least, all of them are capped, apart from Bagley, who we expect to probably drop out when Hampton comes back in. But it's hard to know with Sarina whether it would make most sense to give a keeper a game each. But I feel like knowing what Sarina's done previously, I wouldn't be surprised if she gave Keating both games. But it would be interesting to see.
And then with the likes of Freya Godfrey, as mentioned, and it'd be interesting again because we were discussing whether Kendall would get any game time, and she did, and she really impressed, didn't she? What do we think about sort of the likes of Freya Godfrey?
I mean, I think I'd like to see her get game time because this is the chance, isn't it? I mean, 2 friendly games. I mean, it's more likely she'd get an opportunity against Ghana than China, I think. I think we'll see Sarina do what she did in the last camp and play her strongest team in the first game, which is probably the more difficult game against China. And then she'll play a more experimental team in the second game. And that's where we might see Godfrey either, it'd be great to see her start, but whether she, or maybe, potentially come off the bench. Because obviously after Christmas, when the next games come in February, it's the qualifiers, and you haven't really got any room for experimentation or giving players a chance to impress. So this is the opportunity to do it. So you'd like to think Godfrey would get an opportunity. I think she's been playing really well for London City. And Sarina does like rewarding that pathway. Obviously, she's come through the under-23s. I think she captained the England under-19s team previously. So it does kind of show that there's a route there. So it's so hard to know Sarina as to, sometimes she gives players debuts, sometimes she doesn't. But the fact that she gave Kendall a start in the last camp, I think in Sarina's eyes she earned that start with what she was doing in training. So partly it might depend on how much Freya Godfrey's impressed her over the last few days. But you'd like to hope she'd get at least a few minutes off the bench or something against Ghana.
Do you think, just going back to the goalkeeping situation, Keating playing against Brazil, when she could have picked Hampton, like choosing to put her in goal for that big game, do you think she is the obvious number 2 now behind Hampton?
I think so, yeah. I think her youth is on her side in that sense. I think she sort of views her as the longer term, backup for Hampton. Obviously, Hampton's still quite young, so you expect her to be number 1, for quite a while yet. But I think she does view Keating as the player behind her, and it kind of makes more sense to have her as the backup. And I think she likes having Anna Morehouse. Obviously, Morehouse is, experienced player. I think she likes having her in the squad and really rates what she brings to the group. But I'm not 100% sure whether she sees her as necessarily a playing member of the squad. That sounds really harsh, but I just mean I just think Keating is a little bit ahead of her, and that's why I think she might give Keating both games, just because she might view it as it's better for her to have more experience rather than giving Morehouse a game, not for the sake of it, because I actually think it would be quite nice for Anna Morehouse, who's been in the squad for so long and not played, to actually get a cap, and at least then, she can say she's played for England. So Sarina might do that, but she's quite calculated in the sense of, well, what's best for the team? And she might view it that Keating, who I think she sees as the number 2, it's more beneficial for her to have 2 games and have more experience rather than just playing Anna Morehouse just to give her a cap.
I think the only thing is, Keira Keating isn't really number 1 for Man City, is she? She's pretty much, she's played a few games, hasn't she? But it's Yamashita who seems to be number 1 there. I know. How much weight do you think Sarina puts on that sort of, you have to be playing for your club?
She does, but in this sense, Morehouse is playing in America, but I can only assume the fact that she played Keating last time. I just don't think she thinks Morehouse is maybe at international level and doesn't think she would have her as the backup choice. Again, not wanting to slag Anna Morehouse off in any way, shape or form, because she's a really nice person when we spoke to her last year, but I just think the fact that she's been in the squad all that time and not played, to me that signals she is the third choice. It's difficult though, because beyond Keating, you've got Bagley in the squad. Bagley's not playing for Brighton, and I suppose this goes back to the old when Mary Earps retired, it did leave us with not much options in the backup department, because not only did they not have caps, any of the goalkeepers, but they weren't always playing for their clubs. And beyond Keating and Bagley, you're sort of looking at the goalkeepers, the English goalkeepers in a WSL. You've got Emily Ramsey, who's been in the squad previously but isn't having a particularly great time at Everton. McKeever, who went to the US, decided to switch her allegiance to Scotland, so she was previously part of the squad and is a pretty good goalkeeper, and you're sort of thinking, kind of wish she hadn't done that, but also you can't blame her for doing that to want to play. So there actually aren't loads of options. Faye Kirby is in the under-23s and has been training up this week with the seniors, and we spoke to her actually on Tuesday, and she said, well, it's weird because I look at the keepers that are here and I feel like I'm not too far away from them, because only one of them's got a cap, and you sort of think, fair point, actually. You can probably see, the progression. She is playing regularly for Liverpool, so I suppose she would have been the other option for Wiegman to call up instead of Bagley, but I think she just decided that it was probably better for Kirby to stay with the under-23s and play 2 games. So, she does value playing time, but I think in the goalkeeper department it's difficult because there's not a huge amount of options at the minute.
Well, you mentioned her name, Catherine. I think we've got to talk about it, haven't we? Because it hadn't come out, the book Mary Earps' autobiography, the last time we podded. Full disclosure, off air, Catherine, you'd had an advanced copy and you did promise some fireworks. I'm not even sure you were expecting what was to come, the media storm. Dave, it was pretty sensational, the sort of proper popcorn eating sort of gif coming out, wasn't it?
It was quite amazing to see how it all played out, actually. And as you say, Catherine sort of tipped us off, and then when the serialisation dropped in The Guardian, I think it was, before publication, it was pretty clear to see that it was going to be explosive, and that she was not holding back and being quite well, giving her a version of events, at least in terms of what happened last summer. And I think the most interesting aspect of it was the fact that Mary Earps then launched into an exhaustive media round, and there was pretty much this pod's the only place she didn't come on, I think, in that few weeks, and sort of really had to defend herself in terms of what what had been written in her book, let's say. I'm sure she worked with a writer, but it was still her words. But it definitely felt to me like she kind of wanted to say, "This not. I didn't sort of really write that." There was a regretful tone in some of her interviews in terms of, maybe that's what I felt at the time, but oh god, now it's all come out, and maybe I'm a bit regretful about exactly how it sounds. But then on the flip side, she was also talking. She was quite defiant still, and sort of saying that. Actually, I believe this is a courageous thing to have done, to have retired at this time, and to kind of made that decision. But it was very interesting to hear her side of the story, because we weren't sure in the summer exactly what had gone on. We were speculating, same to a lesser extent with Millie Bright, in terms of like what might have been the conversations behind closed doors. There were some sort of rumours coming out that it was... wasn't exactly an easy situation for all parties to deal with, and it very much seems to be the case. But then obviously Sarina has had her say on it as well, in a slightly less expansive way, but like she's still, and to be fair to her, and I think this is kind of the sort of the thing about the whole episode really, once you get past the sort of intrigue of seeing and hearing Mary Earps' account, basically, they won the Euros. You got dropped for, and you're not going to be happy about it, of course not, but you got dropped for Hannah Hampton, and we can go into some of that detail, but the person that you got dropped for was one of the best players, so Sarina's vindicated, Hannah's vindicated, and unfortunately for Mary Earps, it sort of just weakens her whole sort of argument that she was unfairly treated.
I mean, there's so much, isn't there? There were so many strands to this. And yeah, it's interesting you say regretful. I think perhaps she was regretful, but I think more it was just, I don't know about you, Catherine, did you feel like she was quite surprised by the reaction?
Yeah, I think she was. I don't think she was expecting the backlash that came from those extracts being published. And the thing is, when you serialise a book, which obviously she did and she got paid for, they're always going to pick the most interesting parts, the parts that they think people are going to want to read about. And she knew which bits were going to be serialised. So to start with... the bit on Hannah Hampton was always he was starting off on a bad foot. That immediately got people's backs up. And I mean, the only thing she could have done, and she should have done, she would have had, and I don't know whether the Guardian probably would have said no, but she should have, if she was concerned about the reaction, she should have put it in a contract and said, you can you serialise the book, but you have to start with this extract and not the most controversial one, so you're not starting off in a way that's immediately going to get people going, that's terrible. Also, it was published the day before Chelsea played a game, so it was the day before Hampton's having to play in a match, which I think is why we saw such a strong reaction from Sonia Bonpastor, the Chelsea manager. She was furious and really defensive of Hannah Hampton and Sarina Wiegman, actually, as well. So I think that was part of her issue. And then she started to sort of try and twist it and turn it around and blame it on the media and sort of say that people were putting words in their mouth. And I was like, hang on a second, you've written the book. These are your words. Not only have you written the book, you've done an audio book and you've read it. It's your voice on the audio book. So if there was ever a point where you were thinking maybe that's a bit strong, or maybe we should change that. The point to do that was when you were reading it out loud in a.
It's too late, Mary. It's gone to
video.
press.
Just to think maybe.
Pulp it.
Actually, that might be a bit too much. So it's a classic thing now, and like people always kind of try and throw things and blame the media. It's just sort of an easy excuse, but that really kind of got my back up a little bit because I was like, hang on a second, people aren't putting words in your mouth. This is in your book. These are your words. We're just using your own words, and yeah, I just think she didn't anticipate it. I think her PR team, well, her PR team might be very happy because it's got loads of publicity and probably sold quite well, but I don't think they helped her particularly at all in terms of doing all the media interviews, and every time another one came out, I mean, I know some of them were pre-recorded, but she did a few kind of that were off the that I think weren't planned, and I just thought, oh, just take her out of the spotlight, like for her own sake. Like it's not good for her at this point, and it was quite. Some of them were uncomfortable to watch. I mean, the TalkSport one where she was sort of on the verge of tears, I was like, this isn't right. Like, and I appreciate. I think it was Leanne Sanderson doing it, and she wanted to give Mary the opportunity to kind of correct a few things or to put a different side up there. So I understand why they wanted to do it, but I just thought, oh God, just take her out the spotlight.
It did get, you're right. It did get a bit uncomfortable at points, and like at some points, it was almost like she was doing interviews about the interviews that she's already done. It kind of started folding back in on itself a little bit, and I think you're both right in terms of she clearly was a bit surprised, perhaps overwhelmed with the attention and the reaction that the story got and the Hampton story got. And if you did listen to, I saw a lot of clips of her talking, but I listened in full to the interview that she did with Mark Chapman and Gabby Logan on the Sports Agents, and beyond the sort of stuff about the final conversations that she had with Sarina, which obviously it's very rare that sort of situation is going to be anything other than a bit awkward or a bit terse. Like, it's just one of those things. It's like a manager has to deliver some bad news, teammate doesn't want to receive it. It's not going to be an easy situation, right? But once you get beyond that, she's been at pains to say how much she respects Sarina, and that, like, it's not. And I think that's what I think she sort of regrets a little bit. I think she still does want it to be clear that she doesn't hate Sarina Wiegman, and she still, reflects very fondly on everything that she achieved and everything that Sarina did for her. Like, that was a big thing, really. It was just like, this Sarina, this figure in my life, is like, she's the reason. She's given me this opportunity that's completely transformed Mary Earps' life. So there was some interesting detail and perhaps a little bit more nuance than what has to go in the book, as you say, Catherine, to sell copies. And that's the other thing as well. Like, the book's released just before Christmas. It's in all the bookshops. She's probably done all right out of this in the end, really. A few difficult interviews and a bit of a tricky week, but probably better for her that she sold more books and if she had nothing interesting in it.
Yeah, potentially. I think, I'm fairly, I'm proper like snowflake me, so I do have quite a lot of sympathy for Mary Earps. It was she was bearing a lot of stuff, not just the Hannah Hampton stuff, but it's very, very personal, some of the stuff she goes into in the book. And I can only imagine what she must have felt like when she was delivered that news. When reading it, I didn't feel like, actually, when I was reading it, that there was anything really that wrong with how it was delivered. And also, I think the fact that, and again, I'm biased because as people know, listen to this pod, I absolutely adore Sarina Wiegman. But when she was asked about this, she said very insightfully that, people just have different perspectives on this sort of stuff. And of course they do, because it's just that you're not going to see the same view of this at all. It's just not gonna be like that. And actually, it seems like Sarina Wiegman, unlike quite a lot of coaches that we hear about, is actually quite a good communicator and is very honest, whether you like it or not. But that doesn't take away that it's going to be extremely painful, of course, to hear that news. Hannah Hampton hasn't really been asked about this, although I think she this week was named BBC Women's Footballer of the Year, and she sort of alluded to it a little bit, just saying that it has been quite difficult for her, and I think that's mainly why people are quite upset by it, isn't it, Catherine? I mean, I'll let you go on that. But my last point is that we will never know, thankfully. But it would have been interesting had England absolutely, bombed out maybe against Sweden as we expected them to, or even in the group stage, how that would have gone down. Or if Hannah Hampton had a terrible tournament. But yeah, as I say, thankfully we'll never know about that. But yeah, I'll let you respond, Catherine.
Yeah, and I think, it's an interesting situation now where Hampton's obviously injured, and you never want a player to be injured, but you almost think for her it's maybe not a bad thing to be just have a bit of a rest and sort of get away from everything that's been going on a little bit, and obviously not having the spotlight on her for these England games, which it would have been because there's as much as we want to talk about the new players coming into the squad. Sometimes, if we're friendlies, it's difficult to try and find like what is the talking point. And because the Earps book was such a big thing, it probably would have been on Hampton playing her first game for England after that. So it's maybe not the worst thing that she's kind of out of it a little bit. And I just think whoever is, Hampton herself, but also her advisors have just done a very good job of not saying anything. I think sometimes the best thing is to say nothing, and I probably shouldn't say that as a journalist when you want stuff to write about, but I think in Hampton's case she didn't need to do anything because let the other person do all the talking, and she's kind of come out of it very well without having to really do anything. So but I think, like I say, I think Bon Pastor was very unhappy with the timing of it, and just what was said in general, but I think particularly the timing because of it coming before a game. And I did enjoy her line. It was a quite Emma Hayes kind of line. I think one of them is class and Hannah is the class one. It was something like almost something from the Hayes textbook. I was like, oh, that was quite strong for Sonia, who's usually a bit more relaxed. So yeah, I think for Hannah it's just she'll just kind of want to move on from it. I think she kind of said that in the interview with the BBC. She was sort of saying, oh, can't catch a break, can I? There's always something. But like I say, I think she's played it pretty well by just not saying anything.
She did obviously catch a few strays from Earps in the book. There was this sort of vague allusion to what went on when she was taken out of the squad post the Euros in 2022. Without there being much detail, and there might be various reasons as to why Mary Earps had decided not to go into detail. Some things maybe still do stay behind closed doors in the training ground. Maybe there is a line or whatever. But it was interesting that whatever that reason was, she decided to talk about it as part of her sort of reason that she was frustrated perhaps and thinks that maybe she was slightly unfairly treated, is that Hampton had behaved in a certain way and was she, in Mary Earps's perspective, was then being sort of rewarded or being selected despite what had happened in the past, even though in Sarina's defence, well look, we took her out for a bit, now she's back in or whatever. So I found that interesting, and I don't know whether that was something that within the game, Catherine, it was like widely known. Like, was there anything? What happened? Does anyone know exactly what happened with Hannah Hampton after that Euros?
I think things have been written about, the accusations kind of about whether Hampton had a good attitude or not. But like I say, I don't think anyone's ever really gone into a great amount of detail. And Sarina obviously just said she had some personal issues to resolve. I think there were potentially some issues. She was left out of a game with Aston Villa at the time and then turned up to watch it. And it was all kind of a very strange situation. And no one really knew what was kind of going on behind the scenes. But whatever kind of, she was still very young. I think she was about 21 at the Euros. So I almost think, if a player is kind of maybe, I don't want to say causing trouble, but maybe sort of having not being the best kind of team player, or maybe just being a little bit annoying or whatever. I think that's quite a common thing for a young player, and the best thing to do is to snap it out of them at that age. And whatever went on, whatever happened, she served a punishment, if you like, by having a few squads, missing a few squads and not being picked. And clearly Sarina thought she was ready to come back, and that's why she picked her. And I do think Mary Earps, and like you said, Dave, I think there might be reasons why she couldn't go into detail, but I think if you're going to mention that, you have to kind of give some examples rather than just sort of touching on the surface of it and saying it happened, but then you just leave people to sort of fill in the gaps, which is a dangerous thing as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. People were speculating about how bad could it be, and yeah, I think you're both spot on. It's people can change, can't they? And I'm absolutely certain, I'm 100% certain, Sarina Wiegman would not have a disruptive presence, like a really disruptive presence, no matter how good they are in the squad. So, anyway, we'll put that to bed for now. Although I'm sure, that'll. Oh yeah, go on.
I was just thinking off the back of our goalkeeping chat before we got into this. Look, there's no tournament this summer, but so maybe the World Cup is a step too far. But if there was a crisis in the goalkeeping department and Hannah Hampton was injured, and we were going into the tournament with 3 goalkeepers with a handful of caps between them, do you think there would ever be a call made to Mary Earps to say come
that's
back?
That's the third
all
act, isn't it, of the Mary Earps film? That's the third act, the twist.
You'd love to see it, wouldn't you, just for the drama? But no, I don't think so. I think Mary would consider it. I think she would. I'm sure she made a comment. I'm sure she made a comment even during the Euros that she would reconsider something like if Hampton. I'm sure someone said about if Hampton got injured, she'd sort of said she would potentially be available or whatever for the tournament. So if Wiegman Wiegman wouldn't ever call her. I don't think.
I'm not sure. That bridge has been truly burnt, I think. but I'd love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. That's Mary Earps' music.
Imagine they kept it secret until the first game and she just walks out.
Oh, mate, that would be... I mean, can you imagine, you journalists? You'd be absolutely salivating, wouldn't you? That'd be brilliant. Good stuff. So after these friendlies in the new year, it's UEFA Nations League, which serve as the World Cup qualifiers for 2027. England will be drawn against Ukraine, Iceland, and Spain. And Catherine, that's what tipped you over the edge to buy that wonderful Mick McCarthy Christmas jumper that you're sporting.
Yes, she put my camera down and just see the. It can't go on like this. It can't. It actually says it can't be Christmas, can it? Obviously, we knew it was going to be Spain. We knew it was going to be one of those teams. It was France, Germany, or Spain or Sweden. And I think, without disrespecting Sweden, because we obviously had a very difficult game against them at the Euros, but you were sort of thinking Sweden's the best of those 4, really. And we got Spain again. And it's interesting because only one team goes through automatically. So previously, when we had a tough qualifying group for the Euros, and we were in there with France. We actually came second. France topped the group, but second was enough to go straight through. And then Sweden came third, and they went through via the playoffs. The only positive is that because you're in League A, the playoff route that you get, it's harder to almost not qualify. So if you couldn't get through the playoff group, then you wouldn't deserve to be there at that point. So. But you don't really want to have to go through that. You want to kind of just sail through and not have to think about it. And it is this sort of strange situation with the way the qualifying works for women's tournaments, because we saw obviously England men win every single game and not concede a goal, which you might think, well, it's a bit boring, but also it's like, well, at least it's like you don't have to worry about qualifying sort of thing. So we're here playing Spain and thinking, hang on a second, we might have to go through the playoffs to qualify. And it's the 2 teams that finished in the final last year. It just feels a bit strange.
I do feel a bit bad now, actually, because on the pod when we were discussing England's flawless qualification campaign with the men, I did say, well, I sort of kind of miss the jeopardy a little bit when we had those big games at the end of qualification campaigns where we weren't sure, but. Now we're looking at this situation. Perhaps I shouldn't have been careful what I wished for. But I mean, yeah, you say that if they finish second, and you still expect them to get through the qualification, the playoff round or whatever. But as we saw in the Euros, if there's a game where everything's on the line and you don't play well, and despite the fact that they did squeak through every time, at some point it might go the other way. Might go against you. I mean, and if England weren't at the World Cup, that would be an absolute disaster, for so many reasons. But I sort of, that aside, I do kind of like the fact that we've got Spain. So I think rivalries are good for the game in whatever context. Like it's good for the journalists, it's good for us as fans. It's just good. It just it makes it interesting, and there is definitely. A healthy rivalry between England and Spain based on the matches that they've had in the last few tournaments and everything. And, a lot of the players obviously play each other domestically and in the Champions League and everything. So at least it's interesting from that point of view.
Doesn't require much research either for commentators, which is quite good. Just copy and paste from the last game, and that's all right. Because I mean, Catherine, that's the one. The press room's going to be full for the 2 games, aren't they? That's the one. I mean, that's the sort of headline act, isn't it?
It is, and I think the last game of the group is Spain away, which is funny because the last Nations League campaign, it was exactly the same. It was Spain in June, and it will probably be going back to the same place. It'll be like deja vu. And obviously we beat Spain at home at Wembley. That was where proper England was born, that phrase. Actually, I think it was kind of Millie Bright that came out and said it after the game, so she won't be there to say it this time. But yeah, they play, I think it's Ukraine first and then Spain. So you would expect to get off to a good start, winning the first game, and then that's the big one, because I think it could have been a worse draw in the sense of, without disrespecting Ukraine and Iceland, I think those 2 games you expect England to win. They could have got a trickier team from those other pots. I think there was Poland, who are an up and coming country and held the Netherlands to a draw in the last international break. I think they could have got the Republic of Ireland, which are always just sort of tricky. I think there was another team potentially in the pot. I think they could have got Italy. I think, but we might have been in the same pot as Italy. But it was sort of countries along that side. We could have got Belgium again, and we never win at Belgium away. So we've avoided sort of the trickier countries, I think, in the other pots. But we have probably got the toughest one out of the harder ones. So if you expect England and Spain to win all their games, which they should do, it will probably come down to that last game in Spain. And you want to kind of go there just needing a draw. If you can get a win at Wembley, which they did last year, you want to kind of go to Spain and just say, you know, a point would do us potentially. But also, goal difference, I assume, could be pretty key.
Who beats you?
Yeah.
If they were to win a game against Spain and lose a game against Spain, then you've got to start taking some of those chances against Ukraine and Iceland, because Spain are sometimes, I think they had a better goal difference last time as well, and sometimes England are a little bit guilty of wasting chances or getting a 2-0 lead and not quite killing off the opposition. So that's going to be key as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously massively looking forward to that, but let's enjoy the fun and games of the final, sort of friendly, slightly meaningless, before the new year. So China at Wembley Stadium on Saturday, Ghana at St Mary's on Tuesday, as mentioned, and we'll be back next time to recap the friendly matches from those 2 on the England Pod Lionesses edition, and we'll catch you then.